On a winter morning in Cape Town, the queue at the Scalabrini Centre, an NGO providing assistance to migrants and refugees, is already winding down the hallway. In the queue, people are holding plastic sleeves with expired permits, hospital bills, birth certificates, and printed emails. Each document is an archive of someone's struggle to attain and maintain their legal status in South Africa.
Okay, so you want to renew your papers. So did you bring your permit? Did you bring your asylum?
I lost my asylum. I don't have a copy.
Do you have a phone? Do you have an email address?
I don't have an email.
You don't have an email address.
But bring a consent for me.
You need to track your application so that when the Home Affairs replies to you, then you get answers straight out.
Within South Africa's asylum system, not having an email account is now a major obstacle. Welcome to On the Move Conversations, the podcast channel from the NCCR On the Move, the Swiss National Centre of Competence in Research for Migration and Mobility Studies. I'm Julia Litzko and I work as Knowledge Transfer Officer at the NCCR's Network Office. In this series, through research from the NCCR Network, we explore how migration and mobility are shaped by a changing world. Today, we're asking what happens when an entire asylum system goes online. Is this a long overdue fix, or is it the start of a new kind of exclusion? To help us unpack this, I'm joined today by Dr. Saskia Greyling from the NCCR On the Move Research Network. Also with us is Asha Uwamahoro from the Scalabrini Centre. So Saskia and Asha, before we dive into the content of this episode, could you maybe each tell us a little bit about the work that you do every day and what makes this work important to you personally?
So I am a geographer by training and have for a very long time been interested in the ways in which urban governance unfolds. Change and transition is a key feature of governance in South Africa, where I am from and where my research is based. And given our shift from the apartheid regime to a democracy, urban governance has many socio-economic challenges to address. And increasingly, this work is aided by processes of digitalisation.
I'm Asha Uwamahoro. By profession, I'm a social auxiliary worker. I first visited the organization as a client, seeking to learn more about its services, and soon began volunteering there. I later joined as a receptionist, a role that gave me valuable insight into the challenges faced by refugees, asylum seekers, and other people on the move. Through daily interactions with clients, I developed a strong interest in understanding the refugee protection system. Since most of our clients were coming to the organization seeking legal advice, I gained interest to join the advocacy, the paralegal team. And I'm now working in the program called Wellbeing and Development, where we support vulnerable communities or refugees with basic needs, education, and shelter.
And why did you choose to work on refugee issues?
I'm a refugee myself, even though I'm a permanent resident now. I was on that journey for refugee for some years. I've been here for 25 years in South Africa. So really the struggles which I went through personally, and actually that's why I looked for Scalabrini to volunteer there, because I read about what they do, even testimonials from people in the community. I'm like, this is the place I want to be. And luckily the doors were opened, and yeah, that's how I started working there.
And for me, the interest in migration is reasonably new, but working for the NCCR, we needed to look into something that was specifically migration focused. So we were looking for interesting processes of digital interventions in an urban governance context. And this one came up. And it was incredibly interesting. And I thought the temporalities of waiting, which has been a long-term academic interest of mine, in waiting for documentation and the permitting process, and how this might change through a digital shift, was particularly interesting to me. In doing the research, it's really solidified that interest.
Thank you so much, both of you. Let's turn right to the research, Saskia. What led you to research this topic that we're talking about today, which is digital asylum systems in South Africa?
The NCCR project that I worked on used the COVID-19 pandemic as an entry point to explore questions of digital intervention in urban governance. The Department of Home Affairs, or what we might refer to as the DHA in the coming, it introduced an online system a year into our lockdowns after a blanket extension to all permits. And we thought this was an interesting case to delve into to understand what it actually meant for those who were forced to make this change to the digital almost overnight.
And what surprised you the most while you were doing your research?
The fact that the digital intervention was not simply a digital output, that in fact there was a huge reliance still on paper-based material things required to make this system work. So although the shift was digital, you still needed paper documentation. You needed proof of your permit, which was often a printed out version of a permit that had been folded up and kept in pockets or safely kept in a clear envelope. You needed to have an affidavit with proof of your address. Various supporting documents were required, all of which were paper-based. And of course, the other surprising thing was that, well, it wasn't really surprising, but was that intermediaries like the Scalabrini Centre had to step in to assist migrants or asylum seekers and refugees with this shift to the digital.
So now let's hear from you, Asha. To start with, could you just briefly describe to us what the Scalabrini Centre is, who do you help, and why their services are needed in the first place?
So the Scalabrini Centre works with migrants and refugees every day. Our work is challenging in different ways. Similarly, we work alongside people on the move. We call them people on the move, who carry their stories, hardships, and hopes. As they encounter us and our services on their journey, we have a great opportunity of affecting their lives. As they come for the services, we really get to know them and they get to know what we do. When they come, they find other services that we offer, not only when it comes to documentation. We also provide them with welfare support, mostly for new people arriving in the country who need food or shelter, a place to stay. And then we teach them also English. We have got an English school because most of them, they come in countries where they don't speak English. And also we try to direct to go to Home Affairs.
And just to clarify, so Home Affairs is the government office in charge of granting asylum or other type of legal documents to foreigners.
Department of Home Affairs is where you get documentation, where you are recognized as asylum seeker so that you can have a document.
To help us understand the history and the challenges of South Africa as a destination for refugees and migrants, we now turn to Corey Johnson. He has worked on migration issues in South Africa for over a decade, including with the advocacy program at the Scalabrini Centre. He's currently a PhD candidate at the African Centre for Cities at the University of Cape Town.
Since the end of apartheid, South Africa has become an important country of refuge for people from across the continent, from countries such as Somalia, the DRC, and Burundi. The impact of these new forms of mobility is easy to see across the cities of South Africa, with neighborhoods transformed and now linked through diaspora networks to cities throughout the continent and beyond. By the late 2000s, South Africa was receiving more asylum applications than any other country in the world, peaking at roughly around 280,000 in 2008. And with these numbers, the system struggled with long queues, endless trips to renew documents, and even people sleeping outside refugee reception offices in an attempt to maintain their legal status. Part of the story is capacity issues, but another part is maladministration, rampant corruption, and extra-legal practices deployed by the Department of Home Affairs to exclude people from the system and to exclude them from documentation. There's a long history of litigation on the part of civil society challenging these practices, such as the closure of the Cape Town Refugee Reception Office to new applicants in 2012. And while that closure was found unlawful, the office was only officially reopened to new applicants in April of 2023, meaning that for over a decade the office was operating in a legal gray area. So in this shifting landscape of changing practices and closed offices and high demand, accessing and maintaining documentation has always posed a challenge.
Today, much of the asylum application process in South Africa has moved online. At the Scalabrini Centre, Asha works directly with people navigating this digital shift. Next, could you sort of paint a picture for us? What was the old system like and how is this experience different now that things are online or partially online?
Before, like when you come in the country, of course, you don't know where you're going. You don't know how to get documents. You are lucky if you have a family member who can take you to Home Affairs. So before, how it used to work, you will be taken to Home Affairs, that is Refugee Reception Office. where you will meet officials there and they will do like sort of interview, like wanting to find out how did you enter South Africa, where did you pass, and why are you here? So sort of an interview. And before it was easier, you'll get there and they'll get a temporary asylum, maybe for a month. And then you'll go back to be valid for a month, and then 3 months, and then 6 months, and so forth and so on. And then when it expires, or a day before it expires, you'll have to go back to Home Affairs to renew your asylum permit. That's where the challenge begins, because there'll be a lot of people waiting outside. You have to get there before they open, of course, so that you're amongst the first people that they will take, which sometimes they won't take everyone. You'll be like 500, 600. You'll be a lot of people outside. And then maybe you find out they'll take only 20 people. And then if you don't go inside, they'll tell you go and come back again the following day. So it was kind of not good experience. Remember, when you go there also, you have to go with your family. You have to go with your children. If you're pregnant, you have to go. And now when COVID came in, when now things move online, that was during the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020. So at first they issued, we call it a blanket extension. So it's just a blanket extension for everyone during that period of time. And then in April 2022, when now everything was finalized and explained how the online system was going to work, that's where now you'll apply for your permit, and then you'll get a printed document through your email, of course, with a valid extension. It was challenging where it was a blanket extension, because now if you're working, your employer will be like, wait, your permit is expired. How come you're saying it's valid? So that was some of the challenges that people are facing. Then that one was not easy because not everyone had that extension is now online. Of course, Scalabrini will get clients coming in to say, Home Affairs is closed, what do I do? And then, of course, we were having more engagements with Home Affairs to find out. So someone will come and, we are still waiting on Home Affairs. Please check our website for updates and all that. Or come again to see if you have got any updates. And then the time we got the updates, I would try to break down the information for clients so that they're able to understand.
It sounds like the old system, the paper-based system, was full of its own challenges, but now the new online system has its own set of barriers. And maybe turning back to you, Saskia, I'm just wondering if what Asha is describing, does it resonate with you? Does it resonate with what you found in your research?
Yes, absolutely. Asha's experience at Scalabrini echoes the other lived realities that we encountered in this research of the asylum systems shifting to the digital. What Asha maybe sees less of, perhaps, are the asylum seekers and refugees, though, who have access to digital tools, who are tech-savvy and fluent in the English language, and are confident to navigate bureaucracy in a digital form. But like what Asha has already shared, many asylum seekers and refugees needed assistance from a trusted source, because exploitation is also likely in scenarios like these, where people pay unscrupulous intermediaries for assistance, which may be helpful in the moment of submitting a permit renewal application, but often the follow-up and sending on the renewed permit that comes via email does not take place. So we saw a bit of that as well.
Yeah, it's still a challenge now. Of course, some already know how to do their extensions, and you still find out there's challenges where the permit or the asylum permit delays to come back. You know, like you apply online and then you wait 2 months, you don't have a permit, and then that period you don't have a job or you don't have work anymore because now you are not able to provide a valid permit to be able to work. And then also you find out now if your lease is expiring, you can't renew it because your permit is expired. Sometimes they will get appointment to go to the office because you can't also go without appointment. You need to have appointment to go to the office. We are trying to assist the clients to be able to get their permits back. But then, as Saskia say, you'll find some people are taking advantage of that. So you'll find out some people will come to us because they will say, oh, I have to pay 100 rands to get my paper. You have to pay 200. I have to pay 600. Something which is for free. So we took courage to say we are going to explain to our clients how to do it so they don't pay money, their permits renewed. So those are the challenges which people are facing, especially the elderly, where they can't speak English, they don't know how to use the internet, they don't have email addresses. So those are still people who are finding it difficult to adapt to this online system. but also you find out is everyone who is having some challenges here and there. And of course, as I said, Home Affairs can try to make it work again. Of course, I don't think they'll go back to in-person where you have to go and stamp your permit and print it out, because I think it's working to some extent for sure. But I think they should leave the space for other people who are not able to do it to be able to go in the office in person so that they can be able to get their permit renewed.
As well. We speak about this being a shift to a digital system. So it seems in reality it's an email system. It's not particularly sophisticated, and I think that the problems and the challenges that people face are in part because it's not a particularly sophisticated system. So there is no way of calculating how long it will take to get a response. It just goes into the ether. And so I think also the challenge here was in the fact it was in how it was rolled out. It certainly seemed as though it was a response to a crisis, the crisis being the COVID-19 pandemic, and finding a new way to do something that certainly needed changing. The existing system was fraught with its challenges, as you've heard. But introducing a system that hadn't necessarily been tested, it kept shifting. There were various iterations of how it worked, which emails address you sent to. First, you had to send your emails to the refugee reception office that you had initially been in touch with and got your first permits from. And then it shifted to a centralized email address. So there were all these little changes that weren't communicated particularly clearly, I don't think. And so it required intermediaries like the Scalabrini Centre to communicate those changes. Well, first of all, to learn about them and then communicate them and create things like infographics. That is the work that the state could have done, I think.
For more on this, we turn again to Corey Johnson, who will provide us some facts and figures behind this new digital asylum system.
The shift to an online system for renewing asylum papers in South Africa is pretty significant. In just the first half of 2022, over 58,000 renewals were processed digitally, showing that the system can handle a large volume of applications. But many people still face hurdles, with over 10,000 people being requested to send extra documents and over 13,000 being asked to come to the refugee reception office in person in that time period. Many struggle because there's a general lack of information on how to use the system and because of technical difficulties and outages with the system itself. Many asylum seekers and refugees also don't have the digital know-how and the English language skills to use the system, and the lack of accessible information on procedures is a big part of this. For example, a Somali community leader told me that he estimated that maybe 75% of the Somali community lacked the English language skills to successfully use the system, and that is not even taking into consideration the system's technical troubles or a user's proficiency with email. Even though many people use digital tools daily, communicating with government via email is new and confusing for a lot of people. And that's where organizations like the Scalabrini Centre and other NGOs and community organizations like the Somali Association of South Africa and the Congolese Civil Society of South Africa play a vital role supporting asylum seekers in this process.
Looking into the future and also looking a bit beyond South Africa, because there are other countries where asylum systems are also going digital or will likely go digital in the future. What are the deeper challenges that going digital creates? Does it ultimately create more distance between the person who is seeking asylum and the state?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what the South African example shows perhaps is going digital without a gradual introduction and some way of introducing a system like this means that many are left behind. So, as you say, Julia, it means that many asylum seekers are further distanced from the state and left in vulnerable positions with permits that are expired or are about to expire. And having to figure out a system puts full responsibility onto them rather than with the state as it was previously. And so the effect of this is that the state continues to hold the power in this relationship, but is for the most part inaccessible to asylum seekers and refugees who are forced to engage the state through digital channels. And so while the previous way of renewing permits had many challenges, at the very least, permit holders knew that they would eventually meet the state. Online systems like this one enforce a digital border of sorts.
So then my last question to both of you as we wrap up is, if the future of asylum is digital, and it seems like it is, what's one change that you would really like to see going forward to ensure that the system is fair, that it's accessible, that it's human rights based?
I think I mentioned it, is to have that open communication before the changes are made, to approach even civil societies who work with these refugees or people on the move to understand the challenges that they face when it comes to documentation. I think communicating it first, it will help.
I agree with what Asha said, and I think that while a shift to the digital can be helpful, the capacities of the users must be considered before it's introduced. Phased launches of digital interventions could help to alleviate some of the challenges experienced by asylum seekers and refugees. I think a consideration of the user should be the starting point for introducing any digital tool, but especially one like this where the stakes are really high for the applicant who needs documentation in the form of a recognised permit. Possibly there also needs to be an awareness campaign beyond just the state unit that implements this digital intervention. Other departments of the state need to know what a legitimate permit looks like in this digital reimagination.
Oh, I agree. I think something I forgot to mention, you found out that other departments in the state, they don't know that the asylum and refugee permits are online based. You find out even the police station, at first they didn't know, because sometimes you want to go and certify your asylum and they were like, where's the original? And then when you explain that here it's on the phone, they're like, no, you must have the original. So I think also that needs to happen before they start rolling out the new things in the system. So for people to understand the challenges, it's not that I don't want to be documented, but it's the system which is making it difficult for me to have a document.
Well, thanks so much for breaking down this really complex topic for us. I think it's really interesting and really important to understand what's happening in South Africa. And it's also important for other countries around the world to get a look inside this process and understand what going digital means in reality when you look at asylum processes. Thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Lovely chatting with you.
I want to say once again a very big thank you to our guests, Dr. Saskia Greyling, Corey Johnson, and Asha Uwamahoro. For more information about the research or the Scalabrini Centre and the NTCR on the Move network, you can also see some of the links that we put in the show notes. Until next time.